that has just joined and who is currently joining. Today, this is an introduction to sound libraries and the world of samples and all of those fun goodies that come with it. My name is Lewis. I'll be your host today, not Lewis Thompson, unfortunately. I am the better Lewis. Wink, wink. And today I'm joined by two fantastic creators, Mr. Aidan Hall and Mrs. Katharina Bayer. Hello, you two. How are you?
Hello.
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 Really good.
Everyone.
Oh, good. Fantastic stuff. Yes, so my two guests today are fantastic audio creators, audio professionals, and they've done a plethora of projects, including sound libraries, which we'll be discussing today. So in this talk, we'll be taking some live questions from the audience. If you have any live questions, pop them in. We'll visit them toward the end of the chat. I'll pop them to the side so we can discuss them a little bit later. I'm going to be exploring the world of sound and sample libraries. So my first guest is Aidan Hall. He's created over 25 mini sound libraries, which all sound fantastic. Personally, I'm a huge, huge fan of the Metal Footsteps library that he's done. But he's also done plenty of other things, such as metal shrapnel impacts, EMF and glitches, creaks and frictions, electrical noises and glass. I personally use them in projects literally today. Actually, I didn't mention this before, but I actually use some of Aidan's bits and pieces for today. And you can get them all in Airwiggles too. Check out his profile. He's kindly linked all these libraries there. Hugely, hugely useful asset to use if you are in this industry. And he's also received an IG50 award, which means he's been selected to be one of the 50 most employable people in the games industry and is currently looking for work. So if you'd love the privilege to work with Aidan, I know I personally would if I was hiring, then reach out. He'd be more happy to help. And my second guest here, Katharina Bayer, has worked on audio projects such as Audio Kinetics Strata Library with both the magic and robotic sounds. If you know anything about them, they sound incredible. She also worked for Boom Library, one of the more industry-leading sample libraries that's kind of out there at the moment. And again, I've used a lot of Boom stuff in the past. So they sound awesome. So welcome here. She's currently working as a tech sound designer for Zam Studio and has over 4 years in the games industry. And the most important fact of all, arguably, she's a big lover of tea and cats. So thank you so much for joining us today, guys. How are you feeling? How are you dealing with the heat? Have you been enjoying aircon?
Yeah, it's been great. It's hot. It's very hot right now.
Yep, aircon is what we need. It's also hot here. It's good.
I couldn't agree more. I wish we had aircon.
We have aircon. This is the aircon we get.
This is okay. Yeah, I'll give you that one. Lovely stuff. So we've got a couple of questions. So if you would be more happy to answer. So first things first, sound libraries are a staple resource for audio designers and teams in the game and film industry. For anyone who isn't aware, would you kindly explain what a sound library is for any of our new to the industry viewers? Aidan, would you like to take this one?
Sure. Yeah. A sound library is a collection of sounds in varying degrees of processedness, ranging from sort of really raw sort of batch recordings to fully designed magic, sort of, super processed, super nicely designed, sort of ready to implement sounds. Yeah, varying in sizes as well. You can normally get, a sound library of a couple of sounds that someone's recorded at home, or, big studio projects, 1,000 sounds, sort of mega packs.
Absolutely, yeah. And as creators of these sample libraries, why do you both enjoy creating them? What's the driving force behind you creating them? Katharina, would you like to share?
Well, now I'm not working like professionally on sound libraries anymore. It's mostly because I need something, then I make a library of it. Because when I'm recording something anyway, I can also make a library of it, make a for that I can use later. Yeah, and otherwise for the like professional libraries, I just enjoy the more processed and sound designed libraries. It's a little bit more fun than just do editing and processing to remove noise and stuff.
Absolutely. There's a lot more creativity and a bit more freedom to kind of make something a little bit more fun and fresh. Absolutely, absolutely. What about yourself, Aidan? Is there any particular passion that you have with the libraries that you create?
It forces me to actually remember to record things when I hear them. I've found there's a lot of times where I hear a cool sound and just walk past it and go, "Oh, well, that was a cool sound." Um, Now I actually have kind of a reason to go back and see how many more cool sounds it can make. And yeah, I sit probably the sort of a far end of the spectrum with I like kind of not processing. I like really raw sounds. I like cleaning up. Um, so yeah.
Fair play. Yeah, absolutely. I think a natural sound is a lot more interesting. It's a lot more real for obvious reasons. And I personally quite like that aspect about it too. Awesome. Yeah. So you, of course, you mentioned that you write, you make your own libraries. And of course, if you're just creating something, let's say you're sampling a metal sheet as an example, you've got all this variety of sounds, which is great to kind of create a huge collection of them and use it for other things. But there must be some instances where you have got a specific sound or a material that you don't quite have, and you may look to kind of get hold of some other sample libraries from certain things. Where would you get hold of those? Were there any particular companies that you swear by that you would use, Aidan?
A sound effect, Sonis, um, Soundly has some really good stuff. Just straight out the box. Yeah, I think to be honest, the amount of free stuff out there, if you actually look for it, I'd say you probably this is probably terrible advice. Please support sound library creators. But if you really want to find free stuff, it's there.
Absolutely, yeah. There is a lot of content out there. I think, in my opinion, there's a big difference between the free stuff and the sound libraries that are out there. But yes, it is available if you are determined enough. There is definitely free stuff, which we'll get onto a little bit later when we're looking to recording our own stuff, because that comes into the whole becoming a sound library creator and being able to take sounds from any objects and what have you. What about yourself, Katharina? Are there any sample libraries or companies that you swear by?
Basically, Aidan, I'm the same as Aidan already said. I know I'm not a yeah. I know it's well, it is how it works. Like you want to sell your libraries, but I'm not a big fan of like huge, very expensive libraries with um, subscription or something. It's just I don't like it. I mean, I say this. I work for someone who does it, um, but yeah.
I see. Awesome. Yeah. But yeah, someone in the chat is shouting out the sound effects swap as well, which is a community-driven
Yes.
sound effects sharing, which is so good. I've missed one of them, and I was devastated when I did. Everything in there is gold. So if you're not already aware, search up SFX Swap. It is fantastic, a super useful resource for crowdsourcing sounds. Lovely. So coming on to the crowdsourcing and kind of creating your own sounds, as you two have quite a bit of experience with this. How would you go about creating a sound? What would be what equipment would you generally need to get started with this? I'll start with you, Katharina, if that's okay.
So you mean if someone gets started who has never recorded a library, or what do you mean? Or how I
Sure.
would
So
start?
let's say how you would start.
Well, first I would. I'm not a big fan of gathering a lot of Foley stuff in my flat. I know it's very difficult. It's still piling up because that's how it works. But I try to keep my flat clean. So first thing I would do is go around, see what I can find, see what I don't know. Let's say I need some metal impacts for whatever. Um, then I would just gather everything that might sound right. Get into the studio, get it in front of the microphone, making some takes, some different versions, different techniques, basically just slam it all together, see what sounds good. Yeah, that's how it is.
So you mentioned with techniques there. So have you got are there certain ways that you would kind of impact the metal, or is it just kind of a trial and error and just see what sounds cool kind of thing?
It's just trial and error. Just see what sounds good.
Nice, I like it.
And sometimes it sounds good when you're in front of the microphone, like having no headphones on, and it sounds weird or very different in the recording. So always check that. But yeah, it's
Interesting.
just try.
Fantastic.
There's nothing wrong. You
There's
can
no
do.
wrong answers with sound design.
No.
And what about yourself, Aidan? How would you kind of generally start a project? What would be your go-to method?
Just well, I normally kind of start with an object already in mind, or start with a theme that I'm going for already. So then just kind of collect everything that might be needed in one place, so that it's as kind of, I want to say, sort of minimal movement and effort and like back and forth as possible. Ideally, if you can just get everything done in one go, it's just, the worst thing I could imagine is sort of getting halfway through processing and then thinking like, oh, I could have hit that with that, and then having to go back and record again, and then go back again, and do it multiple times. Just take a even if you have to reduce the number of objects you're using, take less objects and do absolutely everything you can with them, rather than kind of swamp yourself with, I have to do wood into metal, metal into glass, wood into glass, glass into glass.
Lovely, yeah. So it's almost like just using your time as effectively as possible with the resources you have, right?
Yep.
Yeah, lovely. I love that.
Also, as an addition, it might be a good idea to, if you're actually planning a specific sound library, it might be a good idea to just list the object that you have and then make a list of what sounds you need. It makes things easier if you have a list and you can take off the boxes. What did you already record and what did you not?
Absolutely. I mean, on the topic of organization, how important is it when you are creating a library? Is that kind of fundamental? Could you get away with just kind of winging it, I guess? I'll let you take this, Aidan.
It depends how good your memory is. Mine is awful. So every single sound I record is straight into the microphone first. Here's what this sound is. Here's what I'm going to be doing with it. Here's how many takes I'm going to be doing. If ever a take gets ruined, I like clap into the microphone and shout at myself to remove it, just so that I remember it's actually there. I don't. There might be some people who are like absolute memory wizards who can just remember, like, oh, Zoom 0001 is this.
No.
Yeah, I can't say from my experience I've ever been able to recall anything from my my file system or my recorder. But yeah, I think you've touched on something super important there. Is it kind of the clapping as well is kind of a visual cue using the waveform, of course. You can see where the kind of bad takes were. But yeah, definitely speaking into the microphone is super, super important because you can just say, this is what it is, this is what's happening. And it helps you with kind of organizing your metadata or labeling a little bit later on. Katharina, is there anything else you'd like to add on to like kind of general process?
Well, I just add it's especially necessary to just say what you're doing. Also, say where you're going, what your plan is when someone else is editing your stuff. This is what I did a lot, like editing recordings, and it's so annoying when people don't tell what they're doing and why they're doing it, and if this is a real take or is it not, or are you just messing around. It's just, yeah, just always say what you're doing.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that's a really good way to take on it because of course you're not always editing your own library. You've got a Foley artist who could be just creating it. So yeah, it's a really good point to touch upon. So in short, organize everything, people. It is super, super important. It makes your life so much easier.
Something else I've started doing recently, which has saved my life. Actually note the objects that you're using. Don't just say like metal tray on knife, because most people have a lot of different knives that they have in their home, and a lot of different metal trays. If you ever need to go back and make that sound again, it will save you hours to know what metal tray and what knife you used.
So get a label maker, label everything in your home with a
Or
number.
take pictures or
Yeah, take pictures.
anything.
Fantastic. Yeah, great idea and great suggestion to do that. I think it all comes down to that organization. Replication is something that, because you, for instance, footsteps, you can never have enough of them, and you need to know exactly what shoe. You always need them in the future. Awesome stuff. So when you say you're getting your ideas, is it normally stem from the work itself that you're on a project with, or do you just kind of walk past a transformer and go, oh, that sounds really, really cool, I want to record that? Where do your ideas come from? Katharina, I'll let you start.
For me, it's mostly because I need something. So I'm working on a game. Yeah, these days mostly a game, and then I just need something, and if I have the time, I will make a little library out of it. Yeah, and to be honest, at Boom, etc., it was like, we need this, we need this, we need this. Can you please do it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. This is when I'm here. So I'm not good with ideas, actually.
Just wait for them to come in and just execute them perfectly. That's the plan.
For ideas.
And what about yourself, Aidan? Of course, this ever-growing list of mini libraries you're doing. How do you think of them? Are you just kind of writing ideas on the fly, or are you just kind of picking and choosing on the day?
The Notes app is my savior. Anytime I hear a cool sound, I have to note it. I am in a some would say fortunate position, some would say unfortunate, to have a lot of free time on my hands, and not exactly many people banging down my doors specifying libraries that they need. So freedom comes with a lot of nice things where you just get to go and record whatever sounds cool, but also inspiration is sometimes really, really difficult, and sometimes it's easier to just don't force it and just let it happen, come back the next day. Frustrating yourself doesn't tend to help much.
True that. That's a struggle of a creative. But yeah, I mean, it's good you're making use of the time, more importantly, which is always fantastic, of course. So when you have an idea in mind, is there something that you do, or is something that you aim for in terms of consistency with libraries? Let's say there's someone who's starting out their own library. What would you advise for them to do in terms of consistency for the sounds that you're doing, and leveling and everything along those lines? What would be your advice in that instance, Aidan?
I mean, if you're just starting, and it's very important to remember, if you're not doing it professionally, the only person you really have to worry about pleasing is yourself. If other people like it, that's great, but as long as you get some good use out of it, it's the main thing. I'd say rule number one is just make sure you don't clip, and make sure your sort of signal to noise is workable. Anything in between that is a bonus.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think signal to noise is a huge one that I find, especially going back to the free stuff you mentioned previously. I used to kind of look into a lot of the free bits and bobs, but the noise floor was just unusable in a lot of the instances. So I think that's one thing that will immediately set you apart from everything else. So I think that's a fantastic point to kind of touch up on there. What about yourself, Katharina? Is there anything in that you would say that would help out for consistency when making a library?
I'd say if you want to continue making libraries, find a system for yourself that's working. Like, specify how many variations, for example, do you want to do for a sound. So it's just, let's say you always do 6 variations in one file, or 12 or whatever. Just so it makes life easier when you're actually using them in the future. And, well, name them correctly. Go and name them, go do the metadata. It's annoying, but it's so useful.
That's a great answer, really. I think naming is something that is super underappreciated. I mean, it's appreciated, but it's something that's kind of overlooked, I think is the word. So speaking of naming, how should people name their files? Is there a particular format they should use? What would you advise, Katharina?
Well, you don't have to use a particular format. It should be consistent for all your libraries. Then, if you want to invent your own, I would say just go for UCS naming. It's basically mostly everyone is using it by now. I think, at least from what I know.
Yeah,
And everyone can read it. Nobody has to ask you, "Hey, how do you mean this? What is this weird short thing in front of the name?" So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
this can't go
UCS.
wrong.
You can't go
Exactly.
wrong at all with it, can you? So the Universal Category System, for any of you who are not aware of it, is a naming format for sample libraries. It effectively gives you a short form factor, which would be like the material and the action. If you're doing like a metal impact, for instance, it would be METL, IMPT, or IMPCT for metal impact, kind of shortened, and then some tags afterwards, which can help you differentiate what type of sound that's going to be, which is fantastic. It's probably one of the best things out there. Aidan, I believe you use that for all your libraries. Is that correct?
Yep, UCS. Yep. It's also easy because there are like tools built in to help you name like a bulk load of files specifically for UCS. I know there's one in Soundly which I use, which is good. But I'm pretty certain there's like a Reaper script, or Greg would probably know if there's a Reaper thing that does it.
There is one for Reaper.
Yep.
I don't have the name right now, but well, yeah, I know there is one.
Is there anything Reaper can't do? That's my question. It's so flexible. Lovely stuff. So, personally, for you, would there be any dream libraries that you'd want to create, whether it's impossible or not? So, something in space or anything like that. Is there anything particular that you would that you'd love to record, given the chance? Aidan?
Mine's probably pretty boring when you give it the kind of given the chance to record anything, impossible included. I would probably just love to be sort of let loose around like an antique shop. I love like old typewriters and cogs and gears and anything kind of non-electronical, early mechanical, clunky fun, or anything like a museum. Like if I was allowed to go around a museum and just touch things, rather than be locked away, then that's probably the dream.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'm a big fan of mechanical sounds anyway. Anything that's kind of really tactile and has a kind of snaps to it or just really precise movements. Yeah, super, super into those. What about yourself, Katharina?
Well, mine is probably also boring because kind of possible. I'd like to record like big nature things, like going on a volcano, record it, or what is this thing called? Damn it, English words. Is it a glacier? Is this a word?
Yes,
Yep.
like the huge ice structures.
Cracks or throwing stuff into glacier cracks and stuff. This is what I would like to do at some point.
That would be awesome. Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I'm just looking at a question that came in here for any specific recorder. It just made me think of what you said with glaciers. Would there be any particular recorder that would be good for making sound libraries, such as like contact mics and stuff? I was just thinking contact microphones on the glacier would sound really, really cool. Give you that kind of laser-esque sound. I think that would be really, really cool. But yes, we'll just touch on this question here. Are there any particular microphones that you'd recommend? Any styles of microphone? Any cardioid patterns? What's been your experience with them, Katharina?
I would say the microphone you have already is a very good starting point. Yeah, there's like for a main microphone, I think it's not that important, I would argue, because I would go more for those extraordinary microphones like contact mics or underwater mics or something that can produce some cool sounds. And the rest, yeah, just make sure you have something that can record stereo, MS, and one kind of shotgun. It doesn't matter really.
It's
That's
fantastic.
how I do it. I mean,
I think it's great advice. I think you've. I think the equipment itself isn't always. It's not really the most important thing. I think the action itself is crucial to making these libraries and getting that. I guess you could say emotion for the sound, but getting that sound in the first place is the most important thing. What about yourself, Aidan? Would you like to add on to anything else to that?
No, it's pretty much exactly the same. Like, use what you have. It's better than kind of putting it off and waiting. And if you don't practice recording, having a multi-thousand-pound microphone isn't going to make you any better.
Yeah, 100%. I think recording techniques alone, that's another talk altogether with how in depth you can go with them. But I think utilizing the equipment that you've got and learning how to use it to create a sounds that are usable is super, super important. At the next level up, if you wanted to kind of have a variety, I think, as Katharina said, just having a flexible array of microphone polarities would be very, very useful. But ultimately, it shouldn't hinder your attempt to create a sound library or your creations in general. Awesome answers, everyone. Lovely. So for any new sound designers out there that are looking to create a sound library for themselves, what do you often see is some of the downfalls that they fall into? For instance, as I mentioned earlier, the noise floor and a lot of the free sounds that I've heard is quite a telltale sign that some beginners fall into. What about yourselves? Are there any common pitfalls that you see beginners falling into with their sound libraries, Aidan?
For me, it's a lot of the time it's over processing. It's especially if you're trying to do something which is like a Foley library or something which is meant to be quite raw. It becomes quite obvious when problems that should have been fixed very early in the recording have been left until a bit too late. Like, it's better to get things right when you are actually recording the thing rather than try to fix it in post, because it's sometimes fixing it in post just leaves you with really noticeable and obvious sort of little signposts.
A bit of artifacting here and there from kind of removal of bits and bobs. Yeah, absolutely. What about yourself, Katharina?
yeah, I would also say noise floor, and also just any noises you don't want to record. Like, really listen for cars go by, trains, someone talking in the other room, someone stomping in the upper floor or whatever. Yeah, you don't. I tend to don't not notice those things when I record, and I'm always after like, oh my god, how did you not notice it? It's clearly there. But yeah, this, and maybe yeah, also too much noise removing afterwards. For some sounds, it's just it can be way too much, and it sounds weird if you remove all the noise you have. Like, mostly for ambient sounds, or like detailed ambient sounds. It can sound.
Yeah, when you want those kind of nuances of the area around you. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I find a big common with myself is birds. Whenever I'm outside, there's always a bird following me and tweeting at me just constantly, and I can never seem to get rid of it. A really good tip I saw recently was that a sound designer had flight radar app on their phone, so they can see kind of the flight path of planes nearby. So when recording for ambiances, you don't get caught out by a Boeing 747, 737, one of the two, going past you and ruining your recording. So it might be worth, if you're going out on a ambience specific trip in the outdoors, downloading flight radar might be quite useful for you.
Stealing that.
Lovely stuff.
Stealing that idea, right?
It's a good one. Lovely stuff. So let's say you have we have a junior sound designer in with us now, and they are wanting to make a sound library. How do you suggest they approach it? What would you suggest to be the kind of course pathway from starting out with an idea all the way to having a finished product at the end? Aidan, would you like to take over?
Yeah. You can't over prepare early. Like, the more you do at the very start, the less work you have to do at the end, fixing all of the things you wish you did at the start. So, like, plan everything you're going to be recording. Pick a good time to record it. Set yourself a bit of time aside in a day. Make sure you've got your space as good as possible. Like, if you have to record in a closet, then make sure you've got that closet time set aside. Yeah, just prepare to kind of not be able to go back and restart, or else, well, I mean, you always can in the worst case, but it's better to, have everything set out early.
Yeah, fantastic advice there. I've had it myself when I've been kind of creating things for personal projects, and having an Excel spreadsheet with just all the materials you need, what you're going to record, even little tick boxes just to say, okay, this is going to be done. Then I'm totally with you on that. Over prepare. Over preparation is just key, really. I think you can't really go wrong with that. Katharina, anything like to add on to this?
Yeah, I would add just make sure to record enough takes. Most of them, like half of them, will probably not work in the end, so just record a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's it.
great. Absolutely, yeah. Also, going on to the kind of ties in with the over prepare, over record too. And make sure you've got a large enough SD card and batteries with you if you are using a portable recorder, because that can catch you out super quick too. Lovely stuff. So, what would you suggest is a really good subject to start out with for people who are looking to create a sound library? What would you say is a good beginner subject to attempt? Katharina?
Before you said good beginner subject, my mind went to just record in anything library, like just useful stuff, things you might want to use in a project. Just make a library of this. Well, good. Yeah, I mean, things like footsteps, small things like small metal, whatever impacts, not metal, any impacts. Or just or just set a theme, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that. Or you could even tie it into, if you're working on something for a show reel, you could use that as the source, and use those and kind of tie in for that. Yeah, I like that. Aidan, what about you?
I'd just say loud, like something decently loud, just so you're not wrestling noise floor. If you have enough signal there, you don't really need to worry about it. Something you have enough space to record decently. If you've got a big echoey room and you want to record something that's also very big, then maybe start small. Maybe pick something that you can fit in a sort of nice enclosed space, build a sort of pillow fort and record it in that.
Yeah, awesome answer. I think environment is something that we've touched on briefly with external environments, but when we're internal, having an environment where you've got super hard walls or like a solid floor without any cushioning, can just add that unnecessary reverb, which can take the viewer out of the experience. So I think that's really good advice. Really, if you do have something, if you have a possibility of just having a blanket over you, maybe not in this weather because you might melt, but if you have a blanket over you and you have, let's say it's just something like a mug and a coaster, just doing different taps on that, just light small things, I think would be a really good thing to do. And that will remove a lot of that reverb if you're underneath it, which will give you a nice dry signal you can manipulate a little bit later. I find that I personally prefer sound libraries which have just very little, as you said earlier, processing on them. Something that just sounds as real as possible, that can be manipulated into any form of scene, whatever the form of content is I'm doing. So I think being aware of your surroundings as well is a very good tip there. Brilliant. So, what would you say separates a good sound library from a great one? Aidan?
Naming is a big one. The ability to actually find it once you've got it is huge. Like, I'm sure I probably have hundreds of amazing sounds for every different thing, but if they're not named in a way that lets me search for them easy, I'm never going to use them. I don't know, really. Just kind of like the difference between a good one and a great one is like really kind of sort of technical anal things of organization and theming and stuff like that.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, there are a few libraries that I've got where I just know it's kind of a go-to for it, because you've just used them, and like you say, there's nothing I have to correct in them. I think is always a great start. That's one thing for me that kind of differentiates something. I don't have to go in thinking, oh, I know I'm going to have to denoise this, or oh, I'm going to have to do something to this to make it work. So you're completely with you on that. What about you, Katharina?
Yeah, you touched on this already, like with the processing. I think it's a library full of sounds that you can use anywhere because you can make anything out of them, or almost anything. So just a library of good variety of source material, plus everything what Aidan says.
Of course. But yeah, I think
One Aidan.
definitely naming though, because I know a lot of people, myself included, use a kind of search function for sound libraries like Soundly. I think you've got SoundMiner too. All these different searching functionality. So if you can make something that's very easy to find, that also makes it super, super useful too. Lovely stuff. And how would people begin to start their sound library? How can people build up their own sound library collection? What advice would you give? Aidan?
To build up a collection, sound effect swap. Me, just using free stuff, just everything that is free and offered. Loads of stuff on Airwiggles as well. People just give away, and it's great. Super good. You could build a whole collection there, and then kind of pick areas where you're missing things, and either make it yourself, or I don't know, wait for someone to make it, or spend some cash and buy one that's made.
Other stuff. So it's almost like a time thing, isn't it? Just kind of over time accumulating just bits and bobs that you found all over the place. Love that. Yeah, lovely. Katharina, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, also some big library companies have free mini libraries or free subscription. Then you subscribe to their newsletter and they give you once a month the library or some parts of libraries. Can also be useful. And also then maybe you find something really good, and then if you have the money, you buy the whole thing. I mean, that's what they want, but it's also, I think it works in both directions in this point.
Absolutely. If it's a good enough library and you're happy to invest the money into it, it's a win-win for everybody. I've done that as well. Again, with Boom as an example, they do have the occasional free samples through, and they do sound fantastic. And you do come back to them, and it's kind of gained the reputation for them there. I just wanted to add on to Airwiggles as well. There's actually a free samples tab, so you can just click on there. People just upload everything, as Aidan said previously. So that's a really, really good way to hone your craft, because you can post things there and get people to give feedback for you. So if you do create a library, which I'd highly recommend, because it's just super fun to do, firstly, and you get something at the end of it. But you can post it on the free samples and just ask for feedback if you wanted to. People will be more than happy to, and just help you hone your craft with professionals, really, that are in the industry. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. Do you guys have any other libraries planned at all, or is it what's the future looking like for you both? Katharina?
No libraries planned at the moment. Yeah, working on in games at the moment, but no libraries, unfortunately.
No libraries yet. But yeah,
So,
perfect. And Aidan, for yourself?
I've got a fairly hefty page of notes in my notes app, so I don't think
You've
I'm going
whipped
to be
open
running
notes.
out. I have also some rats which haven't made their feature in a library of their own yet, which I would love to do at some point. Yeah.
I cannot wait to hear that rat library. It's going to be incredible. Fantastic. And yeah, that's perfect. We'll go on to some questions now from the chat very shortly. If you guys want to put any questions in, we'll jump over to some ones that were submitted previously. So quick question, is it a good idea to put the UCS abbreviation at the beginning of the file title, even if you've already set it up in a library program such as SoundMiner with UCS columns? Katharina, would you like to take that?
I'm not sure I understood exactly the question.
So I think they're just asking if it's worth using the UCS abbreviation at the start, even if it's been set up with software that's specific to them or specific to their machine with their own libraries. For me personally, I think the more information you can give, the better. Just because it's easier for anyone to. It's a universal system, so it's designed for anyone, for any background, just to search. Okay, I want this particular plastic impact or plastic movement or what have you. So I personally think it would be.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Also, I mean, if there are sounds you recorded and you have them in your program, so that's. I mean, if you only have your own recorded sounds in it, then it probably doesn't matter. But if you have other sounds from other sound libraries in it, and they have this short thing at the front, then it just, for consistency, and as you said, the more information, the better. Can't hurt.
Yeah. Absolutely, I think it's a good. I think it's just a good habit to get into as well. As you'll pick up when you're doing recordings, what have you, certain, like say, keep an eye on your noise floor and techniques overall. I think it's good just to keep into that habit. Another question that we had was a question on processing recordings to all three of you. I prefer unprocessed recordings for obvious reasons. You can shape them however you want, but I also like mildly processed, not designed recordings because I feel inspired by what I hear while looking for a starting point. What are your thoughts on this? Would anyone like to take that? I can kickstart if you like. Yeah, sure thing. Okay, so I do hear a few sample libraries occasionally where they've got the added reverbs and they've added kind of a little bit more character to them. I think they are good for inspiration to give you an understanding of what you can hear. And let's say a cloth movement, for an example. If you're hearing something, you're hearing two kind of metal pieces or like buttons moving together. I think it's good you can take that and apply it to your sounds. Personally, for me, I kind of get as raw as possible in terms of the audio. But I think it's a good starting point. I think you can definitely take influence from a lot of these libraries for that. But I'm personally in the team of having it as raw as possible, so I can manipulate it to any project. I like to be very adaptable with my sound libraries, not to be pinned into one particular niche. Personally, what about yourself, Aidan?
I agree. I mean, I don't mind a bit of processing as long as I'm not fighting to undo it and kind of wishing I got it kind of 4 steps ago. Like if I need to try and take off a reverb tail that you've added and take off, to try and, rebuild this sort of overcompressed, reverberated sort of monster into what I actually want it to be, then you're kind of in the realm of, you've made it as a kind of drag and drop asset, and it's a bit kind of,
Just to touch up on this, I think Abdullah's mentioned he was referring to the dynamic processing and not effects like delays and reverbs. That's an interesting one because that kind of gets onto the shaping of the sound itself. And again, it kind of, for me, I like, again, just complete control. I would be happy if someone just gave me some source, which was nice, lovely, clean stuff. But I'm quite nitpicky with that stuff. I'll be as intricate as I can personally. Katharina, do you have any input on this?
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I like it not to process, so I have just freedom to do what I want with it.
Fantastic. I hope that answers your question now, Abdullah. On to another question here. So, how do you go about recording clean animal sounds? This one might be for you, Aidan. There must be a lot of other sounds going on in the backgrounds or in those spaces, or how do you clean them up?
Animals are ridiculously unpredictable, and you need to kind of not fight that because they will just be very difficult. Sometimes they won't play ball, sometimes they will. Like right now, my rats have decided to be as noisy as they ever are. Yeah, it's mostly just down to making the best of what you have. Like if you get the chance to record a cow, but it's going to be on a farm, that's where you're going to record the cow. If you want a recording of a cow, that's where you'll get it. So just try and do what you can with it, but there is a certain point at which you have to just accept that's the best you can get.
How would you go about cleaning up in an instance like that?
RX, I would kind of just strip bits that you don't want, bits that you can just fully cut. There's no point kind of over processing that. And then yeah, RX kind of it's better to approach things with a scalpel rather than a hammer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In a lot of cases, it's a less is more instance because you can really create some rough artifacts which are very noticeable the second time around. Absolutely. Brilliant. We've got a question here for Katharina directly. How did you get into working for Boom Library?
That's very easy. I applied. I went on their website. I looked for the email address. They hadn't any jobs open. And I just said, hi, would you please employ me?
We got a question here from Scott. Hi, Scott. How are you? Saying, what are the most sought after sounds by designers that there's either not enough variety of or are so hard to find or capture? Who would like to go first? I can think of a few. I mean, for me, doors. Always in need of doors, no matter what the instance is. Not that they're difficult, but it's just variety to have as many variety of doors as possible. They're not super challenging, but they are a few pitfalls that you can run into when recording doors, such as the kind of a gust of wind if the microphone isn't placed properly, and when you're kind of slamming a door, that can just give you a huge peak on your microphone. So it's just worth bearing that in mind if you do want to look into that kind of thing. What about you guys? What immediately jumps out as sought after sounds?
I think for me it's vocal reactions, especially female vocal reactions, because lots of sound designers have a dark voiced male voice, and there are lots of them out there, but not so many female ones. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There was actually another crowdsource event similar to Sound Effects Swap called Boring Reactions. I'll see if we can get the link for that. But effectively, it's crowdsourced events for reactions like that, with shock or disgust or crowds of just all these boring reactions. I'll see if we can get hold of that and pop it in chat because they're super handy to have. Aidan, what about yourself?
I mean, there's one that I can think of because I was looking for it recently. Is crowds where the person with the recording device isn't stood in the crowd, especially for like cheers and things like that. I was looking for some good sort of like crowd cheering football game ambience, and about halfway through it, there is just a guy who is like a meter away from the microphone, just really, really happy and excited, but absolutely ruining me ever being able to use that.
Yep, I've come across a few of those before as well, especially in your own recordings. There's just one person who just seems to think they're the limelight, and you just want ambience. Absolutely. A couple more questions, and we will bring this talk to a close. Thank you so much for your time today, guys. I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here for this. if you are a freelancer and working on sound design for someone's project, would you be able to use the sound libraries like Boom that you've purchased for yourself for their project? To my understanding, yes. I'm not a legal professional by any means, but to my understanding, you can if you've purchased it. You own the license to use it in your in works that you are hired for. Does that sound about right to everybody else? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
should
I'd
Yeah,
double check, like, just
yes.
without going out and giving legal advice. Double check and read the license, and then it's completely on you if you do that. But yes, as far as I know.
Yeah, every download you have should come with a license file in there that will just express the terms of what it can be used for. So always double check that once you have done. And one last question, which would be from myself. Where can people find you and follow you on their socials if they'd wish to do so? If you are happy to say that. Either one of you take the floor if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have Twitter. I don't know. I actually don't know my Twitter name thingy. I don't use Twitter so much. And you can find me on my website. It's just I don't know how do we want to do this, Louis? How did you plan this?
Our lovely mods will find it if you're happy for your Twitter to be popped on there.
I also
sure
can just type it in the chat
it.
if you want.
You can pop it in chat if you know it. Yeah, absolutely. And for yourself, Aidan, of course, you can find Aidan on Airwiggles. But any socials you'd like people to follow you on?
Airwiggles, Twitter, LinkedIn, uh, everything. I think I'm on everything as some combination of Aidan Hall, or Aidan Hall Audio. And also on your advice, actually, Lewis, my website now has a page which collates all of my sound libraries in one place. So I can chuck a link to that in chat as well if anyone is.
Yeah, if anyone's interested in accumulating libraries, this is one of the best links you can find out there. They're fantastic libraries, and I cannot praise them enough. Fantastic stuff. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here. It's been a genuine pleasure to chat to you today about all these. And yeah, thank you for your time. I will end the stream now. It will take a couple of seconds for it all to go through. Thank you so much for everyone in chat, and thank you for all the questions. Really, really appreciate those. If there's anything else that you'd like to ask us, feel free to reach out to us on Airwiggles. We're more happy to help out. Drop a comment on this chat, and we'll keep an eye on everything that was going on. And yeah, thank you for your time.